Do you remember the last time when you were in Germany? It's a long time ago, they told me.
Oh, it would have been in '88. Actually, no, it wouldn't have been. No, what am I talking about? I came back here for the MTV Europe Awards in front of the Brandenburg Gate, the first one. So that would have been '93 or '94.
Or do you remember your appearance at the Musikladen with Wham?
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yes, that's many, many years ago. My distant memory.
What about your German fans, George? How can you characterize your German fans? You have a lot all over the world, but as we broadcast everything in Germany, so they will be interested in hearing that.
I guess I hope that that my fans are kind of the same world over. You know, people who like the particular qualities of my music. You know, I don't know that there's any difference really. I think I'm lucky enough to have an audience. Quite a large audience, and I guess it's pretty much the same everywhere.
So it took now almost 8 years for a new album from the last one. What did you do in 8 years, George?
Well, I mean, I have had some work out there. I had a greatest hits album out, and I did an album of standard covers in '99. But the last 4 years, at least 4 to 5 years, I've been trying to make this record, really. Trying very hard to make this record. I went through a long period of depression, which I think was still attached to the loss of my mother. And I became... there was a catch-22 going on of depression and writer's block, you know. And I spent 3 years really trying to write with no real results, or just occasional results. So that's really what I've been doing. I've been working very hard trying to make sure that this album was good enough, you know.
So you are talking about the depressions, you lost your mother and your boyfriend in '94. Which conditions do you need to be creative, to write those beautiful songs that we find it on the Patience album?
Well, in my particular case, there's no question I am not one of these artists that can work really well in the middle of crisis or trauma, pain. I honestly have to be happy. I have to be in a good frame of mind in order to take advantage of my talent. And I just wasn't in a good frame of mind for a long time. So yeah, that's the simple truth is I need my life to be happy in order to work.
So what did you help in those difficult times? Which resources did you have in that times?
Well, I had my family, and also I've had for nearly 8 years my partner Kenny, who has been amazing. But I think one of the things that anyone who goes through loss will tell you is that if you do have a loving partner, you kind of feel guilty that it's not enough, you know, that it's not enough to lift you from the depression, because obviously your partner is trying very hard to get through to you, and part of you just can't lighten up, you know. But he's been amazing, and I'm sure that without him, I don't think that this album would ever have been made, this last album.
There is a song for him, and even a song...
A couple of songs for him,
A couple
actually.
of songs for him, and for your mother, I think, and for your boyfriend who died in '94, yes. So I hope you're happy now, because the album Patience is beautiful. Why did you call it Patience? Does it refer to your fans who had to be patient for the next...
Well, it does, yes, absolutely. And on the album, on the sleeve of the album, I acknowledge that I have the most patient fans in pop history, because, you know, it doesn't seem to matter how long I leave them waiting, they never let me down, you know, which is fantastic.
George, we had the frightening news a couple of weeks ago that you would retire from the commercial music business. Is it true, and how do you plan it?
Well, it's been called retirement by people who I think who want to get me into trouble, as usual. But actually, all I'm trying to do is create a situation where I can communicate directly with my fan base, and I really feel that if I don't have to work towards one piece of work that will be judged against the last body of work, I think if I remove that pressure, then I have a much greater chance of avoiding further writer's block, you know. And having gone through it once, I really don't want to go through it again. I think this could be much more interactive way of working, and also the idea that it will be a charitable donation site, optional, so that people can download my music completely for free, my future music completely for free, but they can and hopefully will donate money. Whatever they decide to donate is fine, but to donate some money to one of several charities that will be involved in the site. And I feel that that's a positive thing. I don't think it's retiring. I think I'm trying to work out a way to make as much music as I can in the future, you know. And the idea that every time someone downloads a George Michael song, someone somewhere else is benefiting is, you know, for me that's a great. It would make me feel very honoured if people are generous, you know.
It's great. So I think you will be the pioneer in that concept.
Well, I don't think people will be chasing me in this particular area. I'm a very privileged man, you know. I've been very well rewarded for my talents, and I think it seems like the right thing to do.
Is this also a result of the experience you made? I mentioned the battle with Sony and your political and social consciousness you have. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I have. I struggle a little with my privilege because it's hard not to be aware in the modern world of just how privileged you are, you know. And my political leanings have always been slightly to the left, and the way I've I suppose appeased my conscience has always been to give a percentage of my money away. It just seems like now, as an older man, I want to make a little bit more noise about doing that and be a bit more, what's the word, proactive.
Well, you are British, George, and you have lived for a long time in the States, in America. And,
well, I lived for a little while there.
Oh, for a little while.
Just for a little while. It was about 2 years, yes. In the early 90s. People think, even in my own country, people think I live in America. I think because they don't see me much, they don't see me photograph very much when I go out. I don't do television in general, haven't done for a long time. So I think people just assume that I'm living somewhere in America, but really I've just been working hard in England.
Yeah, they are thinking of the toilet affair in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, yeah.
Therefore, by the way, the toilet affair, may I ask you, what did the
I've never heard it called that before. Toilet affair. It was a very brief affair. It was a brief encounter.
A very brief toilet affair. Mm. What did it cause in your life after that?
I think it was a very positive experience, strangely enough. I think when you allow yourself to be humiliated on that level, a lot of other things seem a lot less scary afterwards. And as someone who was such an obsessively private person, it was obviously obviously for someone so incredibly private, that was an amazingly out of character idea, which is obviously what made it attractive to me. But I think everything that's come from it has been positive, really. Just about everything.
Was it positive that your coming out was public in that moment from that event on?
Well, I suppose I was relieved to be rid of what I thought was a kind of ridiculous secret, because everybody knew, you know. And in my own way, I was trying to tell people with lyrics. I was trying to tell people with the way I looked. I was trying to let people know that I wasn't ashamed. I was just too bloody stubborn to give the press what they wanted. So of course, yeah, that was a real relief. And just the humour, with the humour around the whole thing, you know, I suppose, even though it was at my expense, I couldn't help joining in. I thought it was quite funny in my own way too.
Yeah. Well, George, let's talk about your roots, your Cyprus roots. Your father is still living. How is your relationship to your family and to your father? How important is it?
I think, you know, if you come from a close family, you're always close. It's not easy to hold a family close to you when your mother dies. It has to be said. It's. I think we're still adjusting, really, as a family, to that. But they're still very much part of my life. You know, important part of my life. I don't know how Greek that is. I guess that's quite Greek.
By the way, what is the difference between the public George Michael, the artist, and the private, let's say private Georgios?
I don't know that there's much difference these days, really. I think part of being comfortable, as comfortable as I am, I suppose, is realising that there isn't a great distance between people's perception of me and the truth anymore. I mean, obviously there are still all the misconceptions that come with fame, but I think people pretty much know who George Michael is, and whether they approve of him or not, they kind of know who he is now, I think.
What would you like to read one day in the newspaper about George Michael, or how would you characterize yourself, George?
How would I like to be remembered? How would I characterize myself?
It's difficult.
Overconfident, very insecure, very principled to the point of stubbornness. Talented, I'd like that one in there. And I hope kind, you know, kind, I hope. I don't know, what else? You'll have to tell me.
And how do you imagine your life, let's say, in about 10 years, or don't you have any imagination?
Don't I have an imagination? Oh, well, in 10 years' time, I hope in 10 years' time that I'll be writing music that I love, that Kenny and I will still be together, and that I won't have had facial surgery. That's my plan, to avoid cosmetic surgery.
Would you do that?
I don't know. I mean, I've never really been bothered about aging, but you know, never say never. You know, I know that right now I'm not bothered about aging. I know that 40 was no problem for me, but who knows? 50 maybe. We'll see.
I'm 40 as you are, but I can say it. So
well, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can never say never.
But yes, are there some fears in your life? We are talking about age. It may be one fear one day. Are there some fears also in the...
I think my only remaining fear... I think my only remaining fear is to lose more... to lose other people that I love, you know. However distant that may be, and I hope it's very distant. That's really my only remaining fear. I don't really have any fears for myself anymore, which is great. It's a great position to be in. But I guess, you know, I should deserve that by 40, really. Yeah, I'm not afraid of my own future. I'm not afraid of the possibility of death. I'm just afraid of the possibility of more loss, because I have too much experience of it, and I know it's unavoidable. When it happens, it's just hell for a certain amount of time, so I don't want to see that anymore for a long time, you know.
Yeah, that's the same. I know it with loss. I lost my father, and therefore I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's terrible thing. It's something we all go through eventually, isn't it? But it's a terrible thing. But I'm not afraid for myself. Anybody who wants to come up and threaten me in the street, I'll punch you in the nose.
And concerning the international political situation, the bomb attacks in Madrid, are there some fears you see for the global situation of the world after the 11th of September and so on?
Well, there are two things that really struck me about Madrid. One of them was, obviously, as a member of the British public who really tried to help in the movement that tried to prevent the war. I mean, obviously I feel, on top of the sadness and anger I feel over the past year's events and the horrible predictability of the past year's events, once we bombed Iraq, now I feel a combination of horror that they actually got their way to the degree that they changed the government, and at the same time real kind of spiritual hope when you see millions of people on the streets saying we don't want this, you know, and trying to take events out of the hands of administrations that they don't trust. That's got to be a good sign, you know. And I do read that the moderate Muslim society around the world is starting to rise up and say we don't want to be represented this way, you know. So there are good signs. There are some really good signs. But obviously, I'm just horrified. I thought it was a terrible mistake to make this situation worse by invading Iraq. And obviously, I worry for London. I worry for London. We have an election coming up. And I have a horrible feeling that we're going to go through this whole waiting game and lose a lot of civilians rather than do supposedly the wrong thing and pull our troops out. Because there's no question in my mind, if we pulled our troops out, we would avoid the attack. So there seems to be at the moment a situation where we have a game of nobility going on, which is going to cost possibly hundreds or thousands of lives in Britain, and the lives of civilians that want nothing to do with it. So I'm scared for Londoners, definitely.
So you should call Mr. Blair. Did you call him?
No, I don't think he'd pick up. I don't think he'd pick up anymore. When I met Mr. Blair, it was 7 years ago, and he is probably even more different a man today than I am from the man I was 7 years ago. Who knows what 7 years of power... I mean, he looks to me like a man who's not sleeping well, you know, and neither should he.
That's the punishment for their job. So we all change. George, you changed in 22 years from them. What do you feel when you hear Last Christmas?
I'm proud. I'm proud that something that is really, you know, a frivolity has still registers something in people's... You know, it's 20 years this year. 20 years this Christmas since Last Christmas was released. And yeah, I'm really proud. I'm really proud of any song that I wrote that long ago still being in people's consciousness, you know. Do
you have a favourite song, a favourite baby? Is it possible?
Favourite, but it's not possible, really. It's not possible. It's always been remarkable to me that Careless Whisper is the most famous moment in my career, because that's definitely not a favourite. But no, I can't really choose favourites. That's for other people to do, isn't it?
And the last question, to which music do you listen to, George? Which do you prefer?
Oh, all kinds of things. I mean, the honest truth is, when I'm working, I just listen to my own music the whole time. When I'm actually building an album, I listen to myself most of the time, listen to what I'm doing, and don't listen to enough radio. But I like all kinds of things. The last 3 or 4 albums I bought would have been the Outkast album, the Muse album, the Amy Winehouse album. Have you heard Amy Winehouse? Yeah. But anyway, a kind of eclectic. Anything with a good melody and makes you feel good. Yeah, very eclectic taste.
Can you keep quiet listening to radio as a songwriter and a producer, or are you working in your mind listening to the radio?
Well, unfortunately, I'd love to say that listening to the radio was inspiring and made me want to emulate. You know, I mean, radio is an incredibly powerful medium, and I've always loved radio, but I think radio is a kind of boring and clinical place right now. You know, I think you have to turn to your record collection most of the time.